Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those that you don't know what 10 for the Chairman it is, it's where I take 10 questions from subscribers and answer them to the best of my ability. The subscribers are the portion of our community that contribute extra money every month to enable us to do extra community content, do things like Jump Point. We're now doing some kind of fun little flair stuff for the hangers and video shows like this. Used to be Wingman's Hangar, we've now got Around the Verse we're doing in LA, and we've got some other stuff that we've gotten in the works. So thank you very much for letting us do all this and be able to invest additional money in making, I think, Star Citizen the best sort of community driven game, certainly in a level of like interaction and conversation. So anyway, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to thank a bunch of you because I actually just got back from Europe. I was over there for the Squadron 42 summit that we were doing. We were discussing all things Squadron 42, how it factors into the other aspects like the space combat or the first-person shooter part, you know, what we need to do on art, what we need to do on motion capture, what we need to do on story, what we need to do on technology, and how all that interfaces with the other various parts, because obviously Squadron 42 touches a lot of game systems that are also in all these other aspects. So we had you know, quite a lot of people over in the UK. You know, there was a fair number of people from the Santa Monica office there, so people like Paul Rendell, Dan Tracy. We had Alex Mabry over there, and then from the Austin office, we have people like Mark Skelton, Chris Olivier, Eric Peterson. Jason Spangler didn't go because he was busily making sure that we got the dogfight build system out. It was a good summit. Had a lot done, but came back on the Friday and ran right off to do the next great Starship. You know, last weekend. And so now this is my first opportunity to sit down and do 10 for the Chairman. And anyway, thank various people for sending some nice things. So Viking sent me a nice little birthday card here. Thank you very much, Viking. Had some licorice that came here from Ramsey Zinekar. Hopefully I didn't butcher the word, but thank you for the licorice very much. And then I had a couple of books here that came from White Fang. I think that would be easier than me saying Kjell Edmund. But it's some questions he's asked for 10 for the Chairman, which I don't know if I'm actually answering this time because I think we're pretty dogfight focused. And then also have this really kind of cool book, Instructions for American Servicemen in Britain, 1942, which is pretty awesome. A little book about how to fly. And don't be a show-off, it says in here. So thank you very much for that, which would be Vectaral, aka Joey Lanford. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm about ready to get in for 10 for the Chairman, but today is a pretty interesting day because we're going to also have a very big in-depth post about the flight model, the physics system, how we're simulating, what we're doing, what the IFCS does, because we've really put a lot of work into this and we're doing some really interesting stuff with it. But like anything, when you're trying to do something different, you know, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs is the way to say it. But it is slightly different than, say, the way that my past games, you know, the Wing Commanders, Privateer and Freelancer have been in terms of a flight model. So, you know, there's some people that are still getting used to the flight model, let's say, I would say in a nice way. I mean, there's been a fair amount of debate on the forums about you know, how people like the flight model, whether they like it, they don't like it. I think there was a pretty interesting, good post that said the physics simulation was so accurate that the flight model is perceived as bad, which is correct. So I actually am here with my little aircraft. To sort of maybe do a little bit of an illustration. I'll just talk a little bit about it and then I'll get into 10 for the Chairman. But essentially, you know, when we started Star Citizen, when I started Star Citizen, I was thinking very much about, well, you know, I have to build this game and this game is going to have to sort of handle small, very small ships, you know, all the way from the Aurora all the way up to very big ships like the Bengal carrier. And they need to sort of feel and handle differently because, you know, in the real world, that's what happens. I mean, in the real world, you know, cars handle differently, planes handle differently, ships handle differently. And the other issue is that really in sort of a player versus player, like you against other players, you sort of need a system that I think has more finesse and options than, say, the old sort of Wing Commander style. So the old Wing Commander, the Privateer style, or even the Freelancer style, they very much followed a simplified atmospheric model. And I would say that most other space games do exactly the same thing, which, it's great. Like most space games tend to be sort of feeling like World War II in space. That certainly was a big inspiration for Wing Commander for me. But in atmospheric flight, as you fly around, I mean, you have air flowing off over your various wings, your surfaces, which gives you uplift. And if your airlines or flaps or whatever go down, instantly on a stick, you have a pretty much one-to-one correlation. You pull down, the airflow goes down, that goes down, and then you'll start going up because you've got all this area that's getting force against it. Well, of course, in space, you don't have that. There is no atmosphere in space. And so what we do, and this was a conscious decision from the beginning, was that we essentially physically, and I've been saying this for a long time, we are 100% physically accurate and we don't cheat anywhere. So what we do is we take the ship and all the items that we get added onto it, they get added on with their mass, and that affects the overall center of mass, the moment of inertia of the spaceship. And whenever we need to turn, it's not sort of an instant turn, we actually have to apply thrust at different points, and we apply thrust exactly at the points the thrusters are with linear thrust. So it's all going in, it's all getting calculated 100% correctly inside the physics system. And so it's actually a bit of a challenge because you don't have, it's not simplified. Like the Wing Commander system was, sort of like every ship could pitch at a certain rate, roll at a certain rate, yaw at a certain rate, and could accelerate at a certain rate and have a certain top speed. And so the way you would make ships feel differently was essentially just by altering that. Okay, well, this ship can turn a little faster, it can turn a little slower, it can accelerate a little faster, it can accelerate a little slower, which is fine in a much more simplified system, but it doesn't have the nuances that I think we really needed for Star Citizen, because we've got such a range of ships. Plus, you can have a range of various equipment you can put on it, and that can affect how you fly. Like if you put heavy guns on the outside of your wings versus putting them on the inside, that would actually change how your ship should handle and fly. And so we really spent a lot of time building a system that actually could handle that. And there's a huge amount of engineering that goes into the IFCS, which is the Intelligent Flight Control System. And essentially that's basically a fly-by-wire system like you would have in a modern jet fighter. And because there is no way that any human pilot can sort of control 8 or 9 thrusters all at the same time and move themselves around. I mean, in asteroids, it was hard enough flying yourself around and you just had one engine that you had to turn around. So what happens is the IFCS sort of takes your input on your various control interfaces, whether it's a joystick or a mouse or the keyboard or a gamepad or something, and then goes, oh, well, you know what, Chris wants to pitch up, so then I will move the thrusters to the appropriate position and create thrust to allow you to do that. But the issue with that, obviously, is that as you create thrust, there's no resistance. So you sort of, you start to turn and you have inertia as you're turning. Well, if I let go of the stick, well, the IFCS isn't clairvoyant. It doesn't know when I'm going to let go of the stick. It doesn't know when I want to go the opposite direction. So at that point, it goes, oh, and he wants to go the other way. So then it has to deploy the thrusters the opposite way to do counter thrust to retrograde your rotation, and then maybe if you want to go the other way, get you accelerating that direction. So what there is there's a lot more inertia in the turns than there would be traditionally in, say, an atmospheric flight model. And so, a lot of what I think people are having, getting used to is essentially the idea of like, you can't, it's not like when you let go of the stick, you don't stop instantly, you'll sort of fly past it. And obviously the faster you're turning, the more that will happen. But it's very much like a car. Like in a car, if you're going 50 miles an hour and you come up to a stop sign, you do not hit the brake when you come to the stop sign. You start to feather your brake as you're approaching the stop sign, so you'll stop by the time you get to the stop sign. And that's sort of a nuance of, it's a different way of flying that I think can take some time getting used to. But at the end of the day, I think this system's going to generate a lot more unique feel to the different ships. Because, for instance, like give you an example, you can have a ship with exactly the same mass and the same engines with the same thrust, but if a ship's compact versus spread out and the thrusters are in different positions, it will handle differently. It's very much like a car having an engine, same horsepower engine, but it has it in the front or it has it in the back of the car. They will handle differently. And so, I think what will happen over time, especially with our vast range of ships, the ships truly will feel differently. I mean, I already feel like, you know, you get in the Aurora in the Arena Commander, it feels very different than the 300i, that feels different than the Hornet. I mean, the Hornet feels sort of big and powerful, but it does have a fair amount of inertia because it's heavy, and you know, you can definitely, if you turn off things like com stab, you know, which is essentially this turn control, you know, and G-safe, you really sort of feel like it sliding around. And so I think that's ultimately going to be really good because people can sort of configure their ships and have different ships depending on the kind of thing they want to fly. And also in multiplayer combat, long term, it's, you know, I mean, we got some kinks to work out in the control systems, but long term, it's also going to have a big effect because there's a lot of different sort of dials and knobs you can turn as you're doing it. So, you know, as I'm flying around, I mean, you know, comstab, which is essentially turn control, which means that it tries to hold a turn at a nice angle. But of course, you know, if you're going into it too fast, well, you can overshoot it. So comstab basically reduces your velocity to make sure you hold the turn, and then as you get out, the turn increases you. Very much like, you know, driving a car in traction control or something like that. But, you know, sometimes like a race car driver, a lot of times they want to turn off traction control because, you know, they want to do a power slide around the corner. And you can, those are all the kind of things you can do. You know, we have the G-safe mode, which means that it will keep your velocity. Like if you're pulling a really tight turn, it lowers your velocity to make sure you're not pulling too many G's. But of course you can turn it off so you can keep your velocity up, but of course the risk is you could black out from too many G's. And so these are all the kind of dials and things that you'll be able to tweak. Like someone's on your tail and someone's, you know, turns off, you know, basically turns off comstab or G-safe, they're going to get a bit of an edge unless you counter it in the dogfight and you try to keep on their tail. And there's a lot more that can happen. I mean, obviously decouple mode is sort of the classic Battlestar Galactica mode, which I know people say is a turret in space, but I will say all you guys were asking for the Battlestar Galactica mode and decoupled Newtonian. But I also don't think it's an invulnerable mode. I definitely think that there's a lot of different things that make it not so great because you, as some of you may have seen when I've demonstrated and nicknamed me Crash Roberts, you know, when you're doing things like that, you don't quite know where you're going, and you can collide and stuff, and also your trajectory is pretty predictable because you're going in a straight direction. So yes, you can turn around and shoot someone, but if someone else can move and be more erratic or dodge it, you know, you're then going to be at a disadvantage unless you get out of that mode pretty quickly. But it is actually quite a good way to bring your main thruster to bear to arrest your velocity. So those are all the sort of things that can play within the flight control system, and I think there's a huge amount of potential there. You know, at the moment, there's still a lot of stuff to be done. I mean, we're still thinking about ways that we can sort of balance the various control input methods. You know, the HOTAS setups all need to be, we haven't finished with that. We're working on the sort of user-definable key bindings, and you know, I want to play with how the mouse stuff works. I mean, personally for me, I don't like flying with the mouse. I actually really dislike it. I use either a joystick or a gamepad. And, you know, I will tell you, inside our offices, we have lots of people playing it, and people have different some people like playing with the mouse, some people like playing with the HOTAS, some people like playing with, you know, a gamepad, some people like playing with a joystick. So, and, you know, actually on a full HOTAS set up correctly, which a few of our programmers had, you know, you can do a whole bunch of stuff because you obviously have so many input and controls. So I think there's just a lot of potential, but it's very early in the process, and so there's a lot of, you know, there's a bit of learning. There's some stuff that we're going to be doing, and we're going to be playing with it because the system is fully physically correct. So it's quite easy for us to sort of, you know, basically work with different aspects of, okay, well, how about if we do this, the IFCS does this aspect of it, and because it's all simulated correctly inside physics, it will sort of fall out of the system. So I think it has a huge amount of potential, which is really great that we have it out there and you guys are all playing it. I'm enjoying watching all the Twitch streams, which is brilliant because, you know, you get to see how people are playing and what works and what people are doing. And so I'm actually looking forward to, as we open up more of the multiplayer, as we finesse some of these controls, as we open up some of the management that you can do of your various items, because that's another aspect that we haven't really sort of opened up. I mean, we've got it in. I mean, on the programmer side, on the debug side, we can change power around and do a whole bunch and the shields and all the rest, but it's not particularly well implemented inside the HUD. We've still got to get all the different interface to work well for that. So we're working on also making the HUD much easier and more usable to use from the various control devices. But I will tell you, Brandon Evans, who's our UI programmer here, has his custom setting for his Thrustmaster Warthog, and he's he's rearranging his shields and energy all the time when he's in a dogfight, and it does make a difference. And that is kind of what the goal is. The goal of the whole system is to have something that has all this potential because it's built as a system, but has a lot of different aspects to tweak and turn and tune, so that my goal is if you're just you want to play it and have fun, you can play it and have fun, and it can be like StarCraft or StarCraft 2, where you can move the mouse around and move your units around and play the game. If you want to get really good and really sort of challenge someone, sort of on that esports level, there's a whole bunch of layers you can get into and tweak and turn. So I think it's got a huge amount of potential. Like I said, we're super early days. It's why it's great why all you guys are playing it, getting feedback. And there is a bunch of stuff that we're going to play and experiment with and tweak. But the underlying system, I think, has this huge amount of potential because it's radically different than any other space game has really done it before. And so it takes a little bit of getting used to, but at the end of the day, I think everyone's really going to be happy because you're really going to feel the difference between the ships. And you can also even make your ship handle differently depending on the loadouts you do on it. And anyone that's been playing Arena Commander, like when you lose a wing or you lose a thruster and engine, you can definitely feel it flies differently, which doesn't really happen on a lot of other space games. In a lot of other space games, you just sort of take some damage and then it's like, oh, well, I'm 50% damage, so I can pitch half the speed, which isn't the same as having your center of mass change and all the rest of stuff. So there you go. That's sort of my long flight model explanation, but there'll be a huge write-up. We're going to have some videos today, and I hope you all enjoy it, and love your feedback. It's brilliant. So, okay, 10 questions we get to right now. So the first question comes from Adair Mundy, who asks, will we be able to scale the output and cap the max output of any individual or set of thrusters on the fly? So when I slam on my joystick, instead of the thruster firing at full force, it maxes out whatever I told it to. Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I mean, actually, we definitely have the ability to change the power to the thrusters on either an individual basis or a group basis. And the power to the thruster also controls how much the thruster can fire. So I would say probably yes. I don't know if you necessarily can sort of dial like the amount of thrust you want out of it, but that would be pretty interesting. It would be something that potentially I think we may play with, because I guess this is really saying, hey, I would like to balance the my ship a little differently, which I think should be allowable. I mean, to some level. So you can definitely right now change the power distribution to any of the thrusters. Okay, next question comes from Random Task, who asks, now that Arena Commander is out and feedback from players is pouring in, what are you guys taking away from it? I've been reading a lot of the commentary from players, and I'm very interested in knowing what you're hearing. Very general question, I know. Well, I think, a lot of the feedback, is what I was talking about at the top of this show, which is, probably the most feedback is about the flight model, which I went into depth with, so you hopefully have already had a really good explanation for that. But it sort of told us that, hey, we need to do a better job of explaining why it's this way, and also in some ways do a better job of tweaking it, right? Because it's IFCS. It's a complicated system, so it certainly can be more efficient, be better, or maybe we give it some more modes that allow people a bit more flexibility. It's all things that we're tweaking with. And then there's a fair amount. The other big sort of I don't know whether it's debate on the forums is about control methods, right? So there's a certain amount of, it's arcade commander because you can just point and click the mouse and win. And, I would argue that that's not the case. I actually don't like flying with the mouse. Definitely the mouse does allow you a little more precision in sort of aiming of your gimbaled weapons. But there's a couple of modes and stuff that we have for the joystick and the HOTAS that didn't get implemented for V0.8 that would sort of cancel out some of that. So we're still playing with all that. But, from our standpoint, controls and the flight model are all things that we're sort of working on. I think the actual physics of the flight model is brilliant. I think that the IFCS of it all, we can be doing some more fine tuning, and the controls we're working on. We're going to be doing, allowing people to do custom key binding. That's one of the big things we're working on. Hopefully that will be in people's hands in 2-3 weeks or so. Those I think are the biggest ones. There's obviously a few little balance things, but we're super early days, and it's great. It's positive with the negative. It's all great because it's really helping us sort of hone in. I know we're not going to be able to please everybody, because that's just the nature of the beast, especially with so many people. But ultimately, I think it's going to be something really special, and it's going to be partly because of your guys' feedback. Okay, Smart Ace asks, Within Squadron 42, will players be able to interact with other players in the bar or other public areas on the ship to swap combat stories or to look for a potential PC wingman for the next mission? I think this would be a great in-lore way of handling the PC wingman mechanic you described. Not within Squadron 42, but definitely that's kind of what we plan for the persistent universe of Star Citizen. Squadron 42 is very much more a sort of focused Wing Commander narrative story, and so the co-op will be sort of on some selected missions where your friends can join you and help you try and beat certain missions, but it's not that your friends also are hanging out on the ship, involving in the story as you're going along, because that's really hard to do. You can't sort of tell 4 or 5 narrative stories all at the same time, because it's usually always focused around the protagonist, which is you, the player. It is a cool idea, but it is actually the way that we're going to allow you to sort of meet people for the persistent universe, is exactly how Smart Ace suggests. Okay, next question comes from Willie Jones, who asks, with the release of Arena Commander, can we get an update on the progress of TrackIR integration? And I was also wondering the reasoning behind supporting the Rift, which is only a dev build at the moment, before that of TrackIR, which is released and available to all. So we have TrackIR is on the schedule, and we have an engineer that works on it when he has a chance, and the Rift supports really, to be honest with you, it's sort of like a team passion. We've got a fair number of people that are sort of VR heads, let's put it that way. And they were so excited by the Rift that, in a lot of ways they spent extra time to try and get stuff working because they just wanted to see what it was like on the Rift. And that's kind of really why it was supported early, because, for me, my focus is really to get the game out in the hands of everyone in the base model. So the Rift's cool, but obviously there's not that many people that have it, so that's not really the priority. But it sort of ended up happening because we've got some people that are very passionate about it. So in some ways, maybe more passionate than they are about TrackIR. But TrackIR is absolutely on the schedule. And I actually think in some ways it can be, especially for sort of aiming and looking around, it's great. And in some ways, if you don't want to have a headset on you, it's kind of nice, right? I mean, the headset can be pretty claustrophobic, and the Rift itself has got loads of potential, but it's still got a ways to go. I mean, the resolution's too low, even on DK2, which is 1080p. I mean, because it's right next to your eyes, you can see the pixels. You really need at least 1080p on each eye, probably. I know the Oculus folks are working on trying to get more resolution. The Crystal Cove prototype, which actually has positional head tracking, will make it better. So it's got a huge amount of potential, but it's still got a ways to go. But anyway, those are the reasons. Some passionate devs, not any sort of cunning marketing plan or anything. Okay, next question is from Cyberheads, who asks, with all the excitement around Dogfight module, I am personally more interested in the Galactopedia. Do you have an estimated date on when the subscribers can begin updating, editing, reviewing the information there? I really want to start reading up more on the lore. I don't have a really good date for you. That is definitely on our dev schedule. We're having a sort of, there's some pretty cool stuff that's happening on the website that hopefully will be out at the end of this month, if not at the beginning of next month, that involves some kind of 3D stuff, which will be pretty cool. And then that's going to form the basis of some stuff that would roll into Galactopedia. So after the 3D, it's all part of the shop. We're doing a revamp for the sort of pledge store, which will allow you to sort of visualize and see some of the ships and all the rest of the stuff. And that's going to roll into the Galactopedia. So that'll be something we're working on afterwards. But I don't have an exact date right now. I mean, I'm hoping that we can have some stuff on that towards the later part of the year. Okay, next question comes from Pash, who asks, will there be opportunities in the first-person experience to perform covert actions? For example, if a trader is not paying attention while loading cargo into a ship to ferry supplies to his organization's Bengal carrier, could I, as a player, hide in one of the cargo containers, smuggle myself on board the carrier, and then perform acts of sabotage on vital systems in order to make it easier for my own organization to attack the ship? That's a pretty awesome scenario. I don't know. So we're definitely going to have experiences in first person on planets that will allow you to sort of do more than just walk around and buy stuff and sell stuff and talk to people in a bar. So we're actually going to add some sort of PvE style stuff, like you go down a dark alley and potentially get mugged, or someone tries to pull a gun on you in a bar, but they would all be mod NPCs because we don't really want to have sort of unauthorized PvP on planets because that wouldn't be that much fun for a lot of people. But we're going to make it sort of richer for people. In this particular example right now, I would say that probably not because this is if it's a matter of like paying attention, getting a cargo with some other person, getting on a ship unforeseen, going on to another ship. I don't think we're going to get to that level of fidelity at the beginning, but it's a pretty cool goal. I mean, we're still debating like the mechanics when we're on planet side, like if you want to follow another person or you want to, like say you make a person of interest, how exactly is that going to work? Do you go? Can you follow them, leave them from the bar, or follow them to go over to the landing pad as they get into their ship, or do you just get a notification saying that they're about ready to leave for space and you better get to your ship and leave for space? So we're still going through a little bit of that. Those are mechanics and design stuff. But we definitely want to make sort of the environment, the first person stuff, kind of cool. Like there's like a whole environment and people are going about there doing this stuff, and you can get into encounters. You can get in a fist fight in a bar and stuff like that, which would be pretty cool. I don't know about sneaking aboard a Bengal carrier, but we'll keep it in the back of my mind. Okay, so Blasny asks, can you share some details on how you came to the current balance between mouse and other controls? Like what does the team believe are the current pros and cons between the control schemes? Is there perhaps something that the general user base has missed? Well, see, this goes to the conversation and debate about the control schemes, which I think I was mentioning on a previous question. So, like I said, everyone here flies on a whole bunch of different stuff. Some people fly on keyboard mice, some people fly on HOTAS, some people fly on gamepad, some people fly on joystick. So there isn't like any one, like it's not like everyone's like, oh, this one control method is the best. And like I said, myself, I don't like flying mouse at all, but some other people do like flying mouse. It's sort of, I guess it sort of falls into, were you a freelancer player or a Wing Commander player? But we're still wanting to refine it. So we're not happy with the mouse control. I mean, I don't actually like the fact that you sort of fly and look at the same time. But we do recognize that like on like small precision stuff, having the mouse is easier for some of the gimbling weapons. So we're sort of trying to balance it. We got like I said in the previous question, there's some stuff that's going to come online for the joystick and HOTAS that will make that better for that side of it. And there's also going to be some stuff that we'll do on the mouse stuff that will sort of maybe decouple the movement from the look stuff. But it's still early days. We're still working on it. We're still thinking about different ways to do it. It's kind of why we want to get it out there. We sort of feel like kind of what worked or what didn't work for people. I know there's definitely always camps, right? There's these keyboard mouse FPS crowd versus the old school get off my lawn. I've got a joystick and I've been playing that game since 1980, which would be pretty much me. But my goal is to balance it in a way that you have advantages with any one of the control interface. There won't be one that will be dominant. So anyway, we're not quite there yet, but we're definitely working on it. Okay, so next question comes from Knight, who asks, while planet-side aspects are down the road still, I was wondering about the infamous monsters of the galaxy. Star Wars has the Rancor, the Wampa, and the Cryot Dragon. Will we be seeing similar monsters on Star Citizen worlds? Also, while I have the utmost respect for the lore at all times, could a person of lesser moral standard organize hunts of outlawed species? Okay, so I don't know about hunts of outlawed species, but we're definitely going to have some space, whatever you want to call it, monsters. So this sort of goes to what I was saying. We're going to try to have some sort of PvE combat encounters that go beyond just flying your spaceship. So like if you come across a space wreck and you're exploring it, maybe there's some NPC AI pirates that are there that will, they're trying to jump you and jack your ship, or perhaps there's some alien creature scurrying around the ceiling. So we're going to kind of try and do that. I mean, we're going to have some places you can land and do some exploring, and maybe there's some monsters or creatures down there. So we want to add a lot of color to sort of the persistent world that way. And that's the kind of stuff we can now do because we've obviously had a lot more funding than we thought we would originally. So that's in the list. I'm not saying that's day one, but that's definitely all stuff that we're planning on doing content-wise, and really sort of embracing the fact that we have a very powerful first-person engine. So we want to use it for more than just you know, going into bars and talking to people and going into shops and buying and selling stuff. Okay. Canra asks, once the PU is live, will making modifications and repairs to your ships remain instant, or will there be a wait time imposed? For example, I would imagine that swapping out the power plant or engines on Connie would not be a 5-second job. I.e., how would it balance immersion versus fun? So yes, we've had this debate on the design side, you know, between the make it realistic because things don't change out instantly to, hey, we don't want to have someone sitting around for 2 days before, you know, the power plant's changed. So I'm not sure we've made a full decision on it. You know, right now, like in the hangar, you change out weapons pretty instantly. There may be a case on some bigger, definitely on repairs and some modifications. There will definitely be some timeline stuff. So you'll land the ship and your ship's shot up and you'll go and say, I need it repaired. And say, okay, I'll get repaired. Come back in, you know, 5 hours or a day, which, by the way, when I say 5 hours or a day, I mean game time. And so you can go out and then you should walk around the environments and do some stuff, maybe buy and sell some stuff, talk to people, and go back to your ship and be ready to fly again. So we'll probably do it on some of the bigger things. Some of the simpler things like weapon loadout changing and stuff like that, maybe that's kind of instant or it'll be very short. But we sort of talked about having repairs and modifications like you in the shop, and you can sort of like maybe see like some sparks and stuff happening in the distance while they're working on it, and then when it's finished, you know, could maybe get a notification on your Mobi glass. So that's kind of how we're doing it. But like anything else, we'll just, you know, we're going to sort of fall on the side of what we think ultimately makes the game fun. So we definitely wouldn't want to make it too long doing that kind of stuff. Okay, last question comes from Hot Ice, who asks, one of my favorite features in Arena Commander already is the computerized voice indicators. Will we be able to customize our own personalities into our ship's AI, or is this more of a stretch goal? Also, if you find time in your busy schedule, would you consider having a go at voice acting? I would love nothing more than to hear my ship computer cry out, "This is bullshit," right as I punch out. So I don't know about this is bullshit, but this is bullshit. We're definitely going to have different, we're going to have the ability to have different voices for like your HUD or computer AI. So, you know, if you want the sort of proper British accent or you wanted the American one, we're going to have that. So that's sort of down the road of customization. We're going to allow you to be able to customize your HUD, change out voice packs basically to do that. And you definitely, I will be in Star Citizen / Squadron 42 somewhere. I've always put myself in all the games I've done. So I don't know whether it's the AI voice or it will be somewhere else, but I'll be in. So there you go. That's the answer. All right. So that brings us to an end of another episode of 10 for the Chairman. A little longer than normal because I took a bit of time to talk about sort of the flight model and controls and kind of what our goals are, and really ask you all to read the big post that we have today because I think it's really informative. I mean, John Pritchett, you know, is, well, he's pretty much a genius on all that sort of physics and mechanical engineering stuff, and he's done a really nice write-up on you know, what the IFCS does and explaining some stuff, and I think hopefully you read it and everyone will realize kind of the sort of crazy passion and love that we're all putting into this game. And I'd like to thank everybody out there that has backed the game, enabling us to make this crazy ambitious game. Thank you very much. Thank you to subscribers for you know, kicking in extra money every month to allow us to do these kind of shows, and I will talk to you next week. Goodbye.